Hi guys, it's always great to listen to what Sir John Curtice has to say, as he was right about what sunk the Tories in the last general election, Partygate and Liz Truss's mini budget. So what does he have to make of the petition which is calling for another general election? The polling expert rightly says that this petition itself will have little impact as a general election is some time away. But he is predicting that the immediate future is going to be difficult for both the Conservatives and Labour because the centre ground may not be where both will be focusing on going forward. Have a listen.
It gives you at least a legitimate reason for having this conversation with me, right? But I mean, that's as far as it goes at the moment. You know, at the end of the day, one of the first rules of politics is that governments that are not doing terribly well in the opinion polls tend not to call a general election, although, of course, Rishi Sunak did in the end break that rule.
Inexplicably. It's 4 years to go for the general election.
Sure.
Plenty of time for Labour to turn it round, in your view?
Sure, there is plenty of time, but I think, you know, the really fascinating question we're facing, we just have to remember the electorate were more fragmented in July than they had been at any previous post-war election. And I think, in a sense, the real question is, if the government doesn't turn it around, and if the Conservative Party doesn't succeed in re-ingratiating itself in the minds of the public, where will the public go? At the moment, at least, one can see with the government's popularity already down, it is indeed Nigel Farage and Reform that are principally profiting. They're now running about 19% in the opinion polls. But, you know, there are also the Liberal Democrats, there are also all the Greens. The point is there are now plenty of other alternatives for the public. And I think one of the things just to bear in mind, Andrew, I don't think we can... I mean, one problem that both Conservative and Labour now face is the Conservatives do have opposition to their right in the case of Reform. Labour do have opposition to their left in the form of Greens. So these parties can no longer simply aim for the centre ground. Their life has become much more complicated for them. And I don't think we can necessarily assume that the Conservative and Labour dominance of the electorate of the most of the post-war period is necessarily going to survive this period.
Sir John Curtice, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's interesting because you're going to see politics in a sense split 4 ways instead of just 2 ways. So you have the Conservatives who are looking out to their right flank, where they have Reform UK to deal with. You have also the Conservatives looking to their left flank, where they have to deal with Labour. But then Labour also have to worry about the Conservatives, Reform, and to a certain extent the Greens and the Liberal Democrats. So it's much more complicated for Labour because they have to appeal to... Well, they may seek to appeal to people who voted for Reform, but also people who voted for the Conservatives. But they also have to keep people on the left happy as well. So moderates like the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. Because as I said before, there's a real chance for progressives like the Green Party to give the government a bloody nose at the local elections and at by-elections. If they pour in a lot of resources into a by-election, there's a chance that they could flip a seat from Labour to the Greens. And this would be, you know, a huge boost for that party. And, you know, they focus on, like Farage did with Reform, if they focus on a very limited number of seats, pour a huge amount of resources in there, there's a chance that they could win them. And, you know, people are not happy with the Labour government at the moment, both on the left and on the right. And there's a real risk that will damage the party. And as we know, Labour won a massive majority, but it's extremely shallow. You know, we're talking about a few hundred votes in some places, a few thousand votes in others. So it'll be very easy to flip those seats. Now, of course, the Green Party is not going to campaign everywhere, and Reform UK are not going to campaign everywhere. But you're going to probably see a few by-elections. As I've said before, you know, 6 months into the new government, somebody's going to mess up, somebody's going to be doing something dodgy, and you're going to see by-elections take place. And there's a real risk for the government that they're going to lose seats. As I said before, if they lose a significant number of those, this will result in pressure being applied to the Prime Minister to do something about it, or maybe even to resign. So it's not guaranteed that Keir Starmer will remain in his position until the end of this Parliament. He may not even last 12 months. It all depends on what happens with by-elections. It also it depends on what's going to happen with other political parties. Can they benefit from Labour's loss? And can they also steer Labour in a particular direction? I've mentioned this before, that if the Greens are able to threaten Labour, they could demand that the Labour Party or the Labour government should go in a particular direction. So Labour may pander to particular voters in order to see off a threat from the Greens. But they'll also have to see off a threat from maybe the Conservatives and Reform UK, along with the Liberal Democrats. So going forward, it's going to be extremely interesting. It's not going to be boring. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.